London, mainly in London, but also in other cities like Bristol, Manchester, Birmingham, Leeds, etc. We are really, really pleased to have you here today, and particularly impressive. I know that there is an England football match that started or is starting round about now. So well done you. Extra bonus points for being here today, particularly if you are in fact a football fan, not so much if you're not a football fan, which is the case with me. in2 is a programme which we have created because we were very concerned to ensure that awareness around city law careers was spread as far and as wide as we possibly could. We've targeted in particular year 10s for this programme, but we are aware that there are others in, for example, years 11, 12 and 13 who are attending also. It is a 10-module programme, and what we are trying to do is emulate what work experience might look like were you to be working in one of our city law firms. We are particularly aware that work experience, particularly in person, is really difficult to get for various good reasons, but also that where that work experience is available, it's really only available to people who live near where the employer is operating. And that, of course, is a real issue in London, where we are mainly based in the City of London, one of the most expensive real estate places in the world, and it's difficult to have everybody live near it. So we're aiming to go far and wide. Our policy for this year, our strategic priority this year, is deep impact, and part of that includes going wider and earlier with our raising awareness type initiatives. So this 10-module program is like a funnel. It starts quite wide and then it gets narrower and narrower. So we started with what is London and what is the City of London, what business does the city do. We moved on to what is city law, and then what are the law firms like, how do they operate, what do the lawyers do within them, and who else works within a law firm. That was from Broadfield on Monday. I'm delighted to say that today we're joined by the very fabulous Harry Keaveney, who is a solicitor apprentice. He'll introduce himself at Burges Salmon and is based in Bristol, so not one of our London people. So that's good. That shows you what options that we have, and he will be talking about how to get into corporate law, routes into the profession. On Monday, in our 9th session, we will have Slaughter and May, who will talk about the skills business law needs and how to build them in year 10. And then our last session will be about learning law, trying law, and how to become a city professional. So we hope that by the end of that, by the end of the 10 sessions, you'll have a really good idea of what it is to work in city law and how you might go about getting those roles. Just a reminder, we have a website, citycentury.co.uk, that hosts a whole load of materials. We run on social media on Instagram and TikTok, but particularly, I'd say particularly for those of you who are here today, on LinkedIn. We post on that most work days, and we aim with our LinkedIn page to equip you to perform well when you encounter our law firms. You meet them, you start going to their get to know you days, their familiarisation days, and then you move into their assessment processes. Know that you are doing really well by being here today. Finn will talk to you about certificates of completion or attendance, which you'll want to add, but please feel free to connect with Harry Finley or me on LinkedIn, also Joanna Hughes and Joe Gubby, and also Paul Leamy, who collectively run City Century. Will have lots of information for you. One thing we do know is that we definitely recruit from events like these, from rooms like these. So you're doing really well to be here today. And just before I depart from this section, just to say we will be running events in cities near you. In the back end of next month, we are in Birmingham. We are also in London and Manchester in October. So those are really good opportunities for you to meet our firms in real life, and we'll really encourage you to come to that. Can I just let you know that someone has it seems to be unmuted, or at least I can hear someone else speaking. So if anybody is unmuted, if you could please mute yourself, that would be super, super helpful. Finley, was there anything else I could be covering at this stage?
Anything I want to mention, Patrick, is we've tested you extra hard tonight. We've got the England match on. So if you're attending tonight and you've attended every session of the webinar so far, you have now officially received your certificate of attendance. So this is the 8th session. We set out at the start of the webinar series that you needed to attend 8 out of the 10 sessions as a minimum to get that certificate of attendance. I can look in our participants and I've seen that most of you have been in every single one of our webinars so far. So it's a massive, massive achievement. Thank you for your commitment to the program. That's all I have really, Patrick, other than to pass over to Harry unless anything from
What I
you.
will say is do stay for the next two as well, because they will be really, really helpful, because that's the real bit that helps you get into our law firms and secure one of our solicitor apprenticeships. Remembering that solicitor apprenticeships in city centre firms are harder to secure than places studying law at Oxford and Cambridge, but this is where you get those jobs. So please get that certificate of completion. Do come along Monday and Wednesday. So Finley, thank you so much. I will go mute and come off video, but I am here and I will engage in the chat. Finley, do you just want to talk about the Q&A section as well?
Yeah, other thing as always, there'll be points in the session where Harry will be asking you to engage. If so, as always, go to the three dots and use the Q&A section rather than the chat function. Any queries? I know that on our session on Monday, we didn't quite have time to answer all of the questions in the Q&A. As Nicole said on that session, feel free to email those through to me and I will pass them on to the Broadfield team. I have had a couple of you do that already, so thank you for those and I'll get you responses as soon as possible. Otherwise, I'll pass over to Harry for episode 8, how to get into corporate law. Thank you very much.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Finley. Hopefully you can all hear me okay. So as Finn said, I will be talking to you today about how to get into corporate law and different routes into the profession. Will my slides move? There we go. So, as introductions, my name's Harry. I'm currently a third-year apprentice solicitor here at Burges Salmon. I'm based in Bristol, so we're not a London headquartered law firm. We're Bristol headquartered, and I was meant to be joined today by Jess McGee, who's the resource and business partner in our firm, but unfortunately she is unwell today. But her contact details are there on the screen should you need to contact her regarding our recruitment process or any assessment centre questions which you may have. And so to begin with, I thought it'd be helpful to kind of give a bit of context as to who and what Burges Salmon is, considering we're a bit of a unique firm in that respect, considering we're not headquartered in London. So that's kind of our strapline. So Burges Salmon is an ambitious, sustainable and inclusive firm that ensures its clients, people and wider communities flourish. And so another key part of that is we're also independent. So we're not linked to any other law firms. We don't have any affiliations either with any other organizations. And so we can deliver really independent, neutral kind of legal advice on a spectrum of legal services across the legal market, which is one of our kind of unique selling points. And so a bit about our numbers. So about 1,300 employees across all of our offices. So on my next slide, you'll see where our offices are based. And about half of the firm are lawyers. So we've got about 650 lawyers and about 125 partners. And we operate in all three legal jurisdictions in the UK. So England, Wales, Northern Ireland, and that should say Scotland. So yeah, obviously the UK, as I'm sure you all know, has 3 different legal jurisdictions, despite it being one United Kingdom. And so we operate across all of those regions and we have an office in each key area. And like I said, so 81 of our partners are also recognised by chambers as well. So that's a very high percentage, considering we have around 125. And so that can really goes back to my statement of around we can offer a full spectrum of independent legal services. And so these are our main offices. So we have an Edinburgh, Cardiff, Bristol, London and Dublin office. And so we are headquartered here in Bristol. So we don't have a HQ in London, as many of the other law firms do, but we do have a very heavy presence in London. So what that allows us to do is go into London, go into the legal market there, win high quality work and bring it back to our Bristol office, and actually complete the work. And so we are still having that London edge, that London capability and that London quality of work. But we also have our regional outposts, which gives us different pricing strategies and also unique perspectives on how we can kind of market ourselves in the legal sector. And it's also something that separates us from our competitors. And Burges Salmon was also founded in Bristol, so it links all the way back to our heritage as well. But we've also got an ever-increasing presence up in Edinburgh. So we've got one of the biggest legal offices up in Edinburgh as well. And we've grown that organically. So we haven't merged with any law firm. We haven't So yeah, we all grow organically, which is also quite a unique thing in the ever-changing legal market, I'm sure, as many of you actually know. And so I'm not going to read this out word for word, but this kind of goes to our basis that we're an independent UK law firm. And so we're not international. So as I'm sure you saw, we don't have international offices, but we operate a preferred firm network. And so by that, we operate a network of over 300 firms across the world, which refer us work and we refer them work. So we still have a very heavy international presence. We just don't have physical offices. And that's we've deliberately chosen that model because it aligns best to what our clients want. And it's also tailoring our services best to what we've got. So like I said, we operate with 300 other law firms across the world, which is more than any other law firm around. Like I said, many of the other bigger firms don't necessarily have 300 offices. And so we still have that international work, just not the physical presence there. And so these are some of the areas that we work in. So you can see there's a good range all the way from retail, sport, tax to your traditional commercial and corporate and dispute resolution. Legal cases, so like I said, I am in the DR team, so dispute resolution, which is the biggest department here at Burges Salmon. We're over 150 people across our Edinburgh, Bristol, and London office, which are our three main ones. And we specialize in each one of these areas here on the screen as well. So, like I said, we offer such a broad spectrum here at the firm, from transport to business crime and regulatory investigations to healthcare as well. So you can really see it as an apprentice, there's a real good variety to get involved with. These, of course, not all of our clients are publicly available, but these are the ones who you do know. So you can see we've got Eurostar, Starbucks, Harrods, HSBC, Octopus Energy, John Lewis, Transport for London. So you can see like HSBC, Transport for London, First Group. But you can see that we have quite a few heavy hitting kind of clients in a way. So just because we are regional and we are headquartered outside of London doesn't mean we don't have those high profile clients. And so that's really rewarding work on at such a junior stage as I am. And it's also really interesting to work for a few more smaller clients like Welsh Water, which are a bit more niche in that respect. So there's a good balance. And like I said, these are only just a sample of our clients here at Burgess. And so at Burges Salmon, we've been voted best law firm to work at for the last 5 years on the row, more than any other law firm. And so we really embody our values. And so these are just on the screen for you. So respect, commitment, ambition, quality, collaboration, and fairness. And so that is enshrined into each one of our departments. And like I said, we've now got an open plan model here at the firm. So that really goes to our collaboration. And kind of quality principles. They're really important to how we work as a firm. So yeah, that's a very broad overview of us as Burgess Salmon. I'm sure you can all go onto our website and see further details. But I'll now move on to some more kind of information about the routes into the profession here at Burgess Salmon and the very transferable skills and informations to many other law firms as well. So here at BS, we have two main routes to becoming a solicitor. You can obviously go down the traditional university trainee route, which is this top route here, getting a law degree, doing your SQE, and then your qualifying work experience. But I'm sure the route that most of you are interested in, as am I, is the solicitor apprenticeship route. And so Burgess Salmon, we've been doing this for 10 years. And so we recruited our first cohort of apprentices back in 2016. And we have been recruiting them for, like I said, ever since. So we were one of the founding members of the legal solicitor apprenticeship process. And so we've had skin in the game for us a number of years now. And like I said, you can see this the same length of time. So once you add up the four years here and the 3 years here, it's the same rough. So 3 years and then another 3 years. It's the same amount of time here as what it is the solicitor apprenticeship. So you come out with the same law degree, the same qualifications. You still have to sit a solicitor's qualifying exam. It's just that the solicitor apprenticeship combines it all into one nice chunk in a way. So it's a lot more digestible for you in that respect. So you're not having to do 3 or 4 different applications. Once you start with us in year one, you will qualify with us in year 6, and that is the whole process. And within this 6 years, it's broken down into two segments: the first 4 years and the final 2 years. And so for the first 4 years, you will rotate departments every 12 months. So I'm in my 3rd year at the moment. And so I have spent a year in our disputes team. So I've been here since last September, and I will rotate out this September. And that was what you'll do for the first 4 years. And you'll find that's very common across all firms in the legal market. Their structure, their apprenticeship will be very similar to how we do it here at Burges Salmon. And for your final 2 years, years 5 and 6, you will then join our trainee rotations. So this is where it's slightly different. Many other law firms will do 6-month trainee rotations. Here at Burgess, we do 4-month rotations. And the whole idea behind that is that you are able to experience more departments, more expertise, more specialisms, so that when you come to qualify, you can make a really informed decision. So in years 5 and 6, you will join that trainee cohort. So you will rotate every 4 months. And if you go to another firm that isn't Burgess Salmon, you will rotate every 6 months or however long their trainee periods are. But always for the first 4 years, you'll do 12-month seats, and that's universal across all law firms. It's just the final 2 years where it might be slightly different. And of course, the whole point of this, at the end of it, you will qualify as a solicitor into your chosen team. And so whether that may be DR to real estate to banking, you will have a choice of departments where you qualify into. And that's a really nice feeling when you've been at the firm for 6 years. You can then qualify into a team that you really feel passionate about. And so here on the screen is a bit more of a breakdown as to what our apprenticeship, but once again, many other apprenticeships also offer. And so I'm sure many of you know, so it's a 4-day placement. So I work in my department on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. And then every Monday, I am with BPP. So the 2 main university providers are University of Law and BPP. They're the 2 providers. And each firm will have an affiliation. So at Burgess Salmon, we're with BPP. And so every Monday, we will be studying our modules. So at the moment, I'm doing company law. Last module, I was doing criminal law. My next module is going to be wills and trusts. And so you will complete the same modules as if you go to university, just at different stages, because obviously you're only studying 1 day a week, whereas university students are studying every day of the week for 3 years. So that's a slight separation there. And then Tuesday through to Friday, you are kind of in the firm doing firm work. So whatever that may be, whatever team you will be in, you won't be completing uni, you won't be going to lectures, unless you do that in your own time. So yeah, Mondays are our study days. Might slightly vary at other law firms, but so far from speaking to other apprentices at other firms, Monday seems to be a pretty common study day. Like I said, this here just explains the year-long placements, the trainee rotation, and stuff in the final 2 years. That's just basically going over what I've just talked about. And so all of our lectures for BPP and our exams are all online, so nothing is in person. So I don't know whether that's music to your ears or not. But yeah, all of your exams, notes, lectures, modules will all be online, so you could do them all remotely. And that'll be the case with all BPP lectures, no matter what firm you're at. And so I know people who are at TLT who I went to school with at A levels, and we are in the same lecture now. So it doesn't matter if you're at different firms, you may be in the same module as one another. And like I said, this is a level 7 apprenticeship. So this is degree level. So you come out with the same law degree as if you went to any university down the traditional route. So you're at no separation, or you're at no lower standard once at the end of this process. And like I said, you still obviously have to sit your SQE exams at the end of this. So I'll come on to that a bit later. But some of the benefits. So many people often think that because we're not headquartered in London, that means we don't have London pay. But actually, we've got one of the highest starting salaries for an apprenticeship outside of London. So £25,000. And that's guaranteed to go up year on year. So for 2nd-year apprentices, they're on 27,000. 3rd years, you're on 30,000. 4th years, you're on 34,000. And then for years 5 and 6, you join trainee salaries, which is currently sat at 49,500 for year 1 trainees and 51,500 for year 2 trainees. So that's years 5 and 6 apprentices. And so you have a big jump from year 4 to year 5. And then our qualification salary is 76,000, which is one of the highest outside of London, only second to one other firm, which I shan't name. So you can really see that we have that real financial backing as well, and that financial incentive, which is also a perk to the apprenticeship. As you can see there, you get a pension from an early age, life assurance, health insurance, travel, season tickets, and many other sports and social clubs. So from a really young age, you're really setting yourself up for kind of future life. I don't know many other people my age who are already paying into their pension to some extent. It sounds really boring, but it's also really important. And so these are just little perks about the apprenticeship here at Burges Salmon, but also at other firms, that people don't necessarily always think about. So when you are applying, make sure you look at things holistically. Make sure you look at the salary, but also look at the benefits. Also look at the work-life balance. Look at what you want to get out of a apprenticeship as well, because that's just as important as just kind of getting your foot in the door in a way. And so this is our application process for our apprenticeship. So feel free to take a screenshot of this if you're interested in coming to BS. And so our application window opens on the 1st of September this year. So not too in the distant future. And so we typically get around 500 applications for 4 places. So it is incredibly competitive, but it's not impossible as I am stood here today. So it's not impossible. But as you can see, like once again, other law firms will have their own unique kind of process for this and perspective on how you run this their recruitment process. But this is how we do it here at Burgess Salmon. So the application window will open, and that will involve kind of an online question of like, why Burgess Salmon, or why do you want to work here? And then we have 2 cognitive assessments. So they're not the Watson Glaser, for anybody who doesn't like doing those, like I don't. They're a behavioural and a cognitive assessment. So they're completely random. It's nothing to do with law. You don't need to revise for anything. And so you just do the 1 online application question and the 2 cognitive assessments. And then they get automatically submitted to our HR team, so our people team. And they will then make our decisions as to who will go through to the second stage. And so purely because we have so many applications, we actually run a vacation scheme for our apprentices. And so that's actually based on, so after the first assessment centre, so that's when you'll come shadow people, have a interview, you'll do like a group task. After that first assessment centre, if you're lucky to make it through, you'll then come and do a third week-long placement here at the firm. So you'll come to a firm, you'll shadow an apprentice, you'll be in department, you'll go to client meetings, you'll attend events, and you'll be assessed throughout the whole week. And on the Friday of that week, you will have a final interview, just about an hour to an hour and a half, with normally with a partner. So one of our partners will interview you. And then based on that week, you will then have an offer made to you by the end of the following week. And so it's quite a robust system. So like I said, you've got the online application and 2 tests, the first stage assessment centre, then you've got the vacation scheme. And then, like I said, you'll have your conditional offers made, and then you'll sit your A-level exams, and hopefully you'll start in September 2027. And so we start our process nice and early so that it doesn't clash with your A-level exams. So by the time you get to February and March 2027, you will already know if you're coming to Burgess Salmon. So then you can kind of, I always say, sit back and relax and just focus on your exams. And so you will find that some other firms might not do the week-long vacation scheme for the apprenticeship. They might just do 1 assessment centre or 2 day-long assessment centres. And so that's slightly unique about Burgess. But you will typically find, and I found this when I went through the process only a couple of years ago, that many firms will have their assessment centres will be the same. So you'll have an interview, you'll have a group task, you'll have a prioritization task. You might do a bit of shadowing. And so once you get into the rhythm of maybe doing 1 or 2, then you will be perfectly fine to some extent. Or you will maybe feel like you understand the process a bit better. But I always felt really relieved when I was here at Burgess that it was really comfortable and really comforting that I didn't feel like I was being assessed. Obviously, you are, but when you go into an assessment centre, just really try and be yourself. Try and be as comfortable as you can, because at the end of the day, we're investing in you as a person and not your grades. And so we want to get to know you as best as we can, not what you're like on a piece of paper. And so try and be as authentic as you possibly can. And that probably leads me on quite nicely to this slide. So these are our entry requirements. And once again, so the entry requirements around grades and stuff are actually set by the university provider, not by the firm. So the BBB and 120 UCAS points, as well as 5 GCSEs, are actually set by BPP. And so they're not set by Burges Salmon, so you'll find. So I know, for instance, Osborne Clark and TLT, they use BPP as well. You'll find that they will have very similar entry requirements. And like I said, these are all things you've probably heard before, I'm sure, being reliable, attention to detail, good communicator. For us, you have to be committed to Bristol because that's where you'll predominantly be based. You will have the opportunity to travel between all of our offices, but you do have to be somewhat committed to Bristol 9 times out of 10. But like I said, you do get the opportunity to travel amongst all of our offices, though. Hopefully, this is all making sense as well. We can answer any questions at the end as well, because we should have enough time, hopefully. And so I thought it'd be helpful to kind of give you a bit of kind of an insight into some of our apprentices here. So I've got 4 apprentices, all at different stages, and I can kind of talk you through their kind of role here at Burges Salmon. So on the left here, you've got myself, which is quite nice and handy. So you can see I'm a 3rd year. I started in 2023, and I'm due to qualify in 2029, which feels ages away, but it's going to go so much more quicker. I'm currently in DR, and I have been in real estate and planning and compulsory purchase. So 2 different departments, each for a year long, 2 transactional departments. I'm now in a contentious team. But you can also see outside of the department, I'm also very active across the rest of the firm. So I completed our work experience program back here in 2021, which is scaringly 5 years ago. And so, like I said, I've also completed internships at other firms up in London as well. So I've been able to compare the Magic Circle lifestyle to kind of Burgess Salmon and a regional law firm. Outside of this, I'm also co-chair of our Be Cultured and Be Enabled networks. So these are our firm-wide colleague networks. So Be Cultured focuses on ethnic diversity and racial equality, and our Be Enabled network focuses on disability inclusion. And so I'm co-chair both of them. And we have 4 B groups: Be Enabled, Be Cultured, Be Proud, which focuses on LGBT rights and inclusion. And then we also have Be Balanced, which focuses on gender balance here at the firm. And so they're really nice. You get to meet so many people across the firm that you wouldn't necessarily meet in your department. And that's a really nice way to kind of also balance out the university and work side with something a bit more social, something meaningful, but also something fun as well. And so just to the right here, you've got an apprentice called Ruby Fuller. And so Ruby is in her 2nd year, so she's the year below me. So she started the year after, 2024, and she'll qualify in 2030. Ruby spent a year in real estate before joining DR with me for a year as well. And so Ruby, previously, she worked in hospitality. So Ruby didn't have any legal work experience beforehand. And so we don't necessarily look for that. You don't have to complete law at A level. So if you do English literature, history, and drama, for instance, that'd be perfectly fine. You don't need to have any prior experience about law. And you can see that here. Ruby hasn't done any. Because your first module with BPP will be going over the basics of law. You'll be going over English legal system. And so you'll be gathering that foundational knowledge in your first module. So you don't need to worry about that if you don't have it. Ruby's also part of the Be Cultured group, and she's also part of our infamous apprentice social committee. And so we get given a budget every year by the firm, and we get to organise socials to come together. And like I said, there are 28 apprentices here at Burgess Salmon, so we can really get to know each other really nicely and catch up every now and again, which is really nice. And so here you've got Francesco and Albie. So these are completely different stages. In fact, Francesco is not actually an apprentice anymore. He is a qualified solicitor, as Albie is in his 6th year. So Francesco on the left here, he is a 1-year newly qualified solicitor. He joined the firm back in 2019, but qualified last year. And so we've actually got 7 or 8 apprentices who are actually now qualified lawyers here. 2 of which are in DR, 3 of them are in construction, 1's in real estate, and I can't remember who the other one is. And so, like I said, we've got a really good foundational knowledge of where our apprentices are. But like I said, Francesco, he's the most recent one, and Albie's going to be next. And so you can see Francesco's had a good mix of departments. He's been in construction and engineering, pensions, disputes, and he's now qualified into our real estate team. Francesco, just like me, also did Bright Sparks back in 2015. And you can see he did maths, law, politics, and business at A levels. So they are very academic subjects. But once again, you don't need to have completed those in order to come and do an apprenticeship with us here. You can do whatever you kind of want to some extent. And so LB here on the right, he is in his 6th year. So he joined the same year as Francesco, although LB, for personal reasons, had to redo a year. And so he is in his 6th year at the moment, so he's due to qualify this year. And so, like I said, he's also been in disputes, employment, real estate projects, and he is currently sitting his SQE as we speak. And so you can see how that works. So here at the firm, you get given a whole month off before your exams. So you get given a whole month off to revise for your SQE. So his SQE is in July, so he's had all of June off, and also a bit of May. And like I said, you can see that he's also part of our Be Cultured engagement team, so helps me organise the events basically. And you can see he did double business and law as well. So you've got a good combination there of doing double award subjects to Francesco, who did 3 straight A levels. So you've got a good mix there. And like I said, Albie's currently in his SQE stage. So we have apprentices at every stage of the process, from first years who joined us 10 months ago to 6th year apprentices who are in our SQE ready to qualify in the next couple of months. And then obviously to Francesco and many other apprentices who are already qualified. And every apprentice who has qualified here at the firm has stayed with us. So we haven't lost anyone yet. And obviously a very core part of the apprenticeship is actually the study side of it. And so, like I've already kind of touched upon, we're BPP and you have a Monday study day. So I don't know if you can see that photo, but this is kind of an example of what university notes look like. And so they're very similar to traditional university in that respect. So maybe that reassures some of you. Like I said, we have 3 exams a year, January, April, and September. And that's the same every year. So you can really have that predictability around when your exams are going to be, which most importantly means you can plan holidays. You didn't hear that from me, though. Like I said, you get 52 study days a year. And then you can also get additional days in the build up to your exams where you can go off and revise. So I've got exams at the end of August. I've got the week off before my exams to revise. And firms will have their own unique policy on that, but you'll find that most firms will offer you something similar in that respect to help you revise, because they all acknowledge working in a top tier law firm and also studying can take a lot. Sometimes you need to focus on one at some points. And like I said here, you need to be balanced. If you do too much study during work hours, you'll then fall behind on work. And if you do too much work on your study day, you'll fall behind on study. And so it's really important that you have those clear boundaries in place and that you communicate regularly with your supervisor around when your exams are, so you can manage your workload really clearly. And so that can feel quite daunting, especially as a new person coming into the profession. But it's really important that you manage your workload. And like I said, having those key communications with people who are normally many job positions above you, like my supervisor is an associate. And so he's been qualified obviously a lot longer than me. And so, like I said, it's just having those open communications with your supervisor, your HR contact, and also your university as well are really important to helping manage your workload. But as you said, as you can see, sorry, you attend live lectures, you kind of work through fictional legal scenarios as well set by university, and you have your pre-reading. So it follows a very similar pattern to traditional university in that respect. So hopefully that reassures you that when you come out of this process, your law degree will be seen the exact same. And probably one of the more important slides here, in my opinion, it's actually the apprentice support. And so it can be a very daunting process. And now this is normally quite universal across all 4 firms and all firms, not just here at Burgess. But like I said, you have a supervisor and department. You have an apprentice and department buddy. So for me, my apprentice buddy is Albie in his 6th year. But then when I first joined, I also had a department buddy. I then had my supervisor. So that's 3 people who are kind of in department or on the apprenticeship who are all there to support you. You then have your people team, which is our HR department. You will then have them as a contact. So you'll have normally monthly check-ins of them to begin with, and it might go to like every 2 months after a while. You also have your BPP coach, your module lecturer, and these are just the core people who I can think off the top of my head to some extent. And so you can really kind of get a flavour here that when you join the legal profession, whether it's Burges Salmon or any other law firm, you can really see that you're not just thrown in the deep end. And like I said, you have regular, we call them touch points, but they're basically reviews. So you have those at the beginning, middle, and end of your departments. And so that really helps to track your progress, really support you and guide you as to where your weaknesses and strengths are, because it's important that we look at what you're doing right, as well as what areas you need to improve on, because the apprenticeship is a marathon, not a sprint. So it's 6 years long. So we're not expecting you to know everything on day one, nor are we expecting you to know everything by year 6. That's just not reasonable. And so balancing work with social events is also so important. And so one thing I always get is, when you join the legal profession, especially as an apprentice, do you lose your social life? And the simple answer to that is no. So here at the firm, we have firm-wide socials, department socials, training apprentice socials. And then equally, many of the apprentices are also I class as good personal friends. So for instance, Ruby, Albie, we all go out at the weekend because we also are friends outside of work. And so you really do have that social kind of perspective of the apprenticeship. You're not just kind of thrown in the deep end and left in a big department by yourself. And like I said, our B groups are also really important to that. So joining things that are outside of your department really helps to balance that social aspect. And it really helps to kind of keep you sane in a way. Is how I like to say. So like I said, it's not all too bad. And like there's plenty of apprentice support going through. And you will see that at every law firm. Because I think there is that recognition that you are also young entering the legal profession. And so here's the bit about long-term progression, because I've always had a few questions of like, oh yeah, but are you guaranteed a job? And so, like I said, we have 8 qualified lawyers here who have gone through the apprenticeship. Some are in DR, some are in construction. And our idea is we're investing in you as a person, which is what I said earlier. We're investing in you as a person rather than your grades. And so we really want to get to know you. And like I said, it's a long process. I'm going to be at the firm 6 years before I'm even qualified, and not many people can really say that. So by the time I come to qualify in 2029, I would have been to majority of the departments, met people of all levels, from partner all the way down to legal assistant, and I will be here for 6 years. So I really have that practical experience. And like I said, we've kept all 8 of our solicitors who are qualified for the apprenticeship route. So that really shows you people don't just use it to qualify and they go off to London, for instance, because we have that really nice balance here. And I think that's really important. You know that the hard work you're putting in is going to be rewarded by a job at the end of it. And I think in a very ever increasing changing legal market, it's important to have that consistency, especially at such a junior age. And now just a few tips and tricks to some extent. So I'm thinking back to when I did my assessment centre back in the day. This goes back to what I said, be honest in your application. Don't exaggerate your experience. Try and be yourself, like I said, because firms can see if you don't know the answer to something, say you don't know. Like, obviously try and go in prepared as you can, but don't just give an answer for the sake of it, because firms can see through that. They want to see the authentic, real you. And that goes on to my second point. Be personable. We're investing in you, not your exam results. Many people who are applying will have very good exam results, or they'll have work experience, but that's not everything. If you can hold a communication, if you could be organized, that's just as important as having an A star at the end of A levels, if not more important. Do your research, personalize it. I always say apply to no more than 10 firms. I think that's the sweet spot. Some people you might see on TikTok and stuff saying to apply to as many as you can get. I personally I don't encourage that, because you can't make an application personal if you're having to do 50, 60 of them, and you will miss something. You will miss a deadline. You will maybe include the wrong firm's name, and you don't want to do that. And so really try and personalize your application. Go beyond our website. Look at our LinkedIn feeds, our social media feeds. Look at who our clients are. So like I said, I've given you a few examples, Eurostar, HSBC. Really try and personalize it, not just reciting what's on our website. And like I said, also try and communicate clearly and regularly. So especially this is particularly important during the assessment centre. Just because there may be somebody who's the loudest in the room doesn't mean they're necessarily the best. If you communicate your point clearly, but you're not necessarily the loudest, that's just as important. And often that's what the firms are looking for. Somebody who's got a clear focus, clear priority. And that's a lot better than just simply being the loudest in the room. And of course, this goes without saying, be organised with your deadlines. If you know the deadline's going to be in a week's time and you're busy the whole week, submit it early. If you like to do things last minute, just make sure you actually submit it. And so, yeah, I used to have a spreadsheet with all the firms that I was applying to. So like I said, I applied to 7. So I had a spreadsheet of when they were all closing, when they opened, when their assessment centres were, just so they didn't all clash. So you've got to really try and manage this and have your favourites. So I applied to 7, but I have my top 3. And really make sure you try and know that. So say if you're in the lucky position to have offers from multiple firms, that you know who your favourite would be, who you'd want to go for. So try and approach this in the most logical way that you can to some extent. So that's kind of all the substance. That's kind of a very whistle-stop tour, but I'm conscious I want to try and leave some time for questions. So I have 2 more slides. So we have got a Q&A now. So feel free to put all your questions in the Q&A box. And I will answer them as best as I can. Equally, if Patrick or Finley have any questions as well, they can fire them away. But I will leave the PowerPoint on this lovely slide here of us apprentices. So these are just a few photos of us over the years. So you can see attending conferences. We have a charity dinner. We have Christmas dinners. We attend legal litigation conferences. So it's not all just fun. We do actually work. So for instance, a couple of weeks ago, I was in London attending the biggest international disputes conference in the world, which is pretty cool at the age of 21. We have charity dinners, met Martin Lewis. For any F1 fans like I am, got us again a signed F1 hat is pretty cool as well. So you can really see there's the social side of us there. Plenty of volunteering days. So this just kind of gives you a flavour. It's not all just work. It's a good mix. So yeah, leave this slide up for any questions that anybody may have.
Thank you very much, Harry. Absolutely excellent session. Really, really insightful. I think it really does help when we've got such a niche program to sort of break it down step by step. What does it look like? I'm sure that's been beneficial. We're starting to get lots of questions flying in really quickly. We'll start off with one that we've got saying, hi, I was planning to do English literature, law and psychology at A-level. And after having attended my sixth form induction day, I spoke to the teacher of chemistry who leads the competitive destinations program at college. He advised that I definitely should not take law A-level aspiring for a solicitor apprenticeship, which I am, or a top Russell Group university. I would appreciate any of the panelists' views or opinions on this and advice when the session concludes. What would your take be on A-level selections then, Harry? How did you go about choosing yours? Did you take law? Did anyone you know take law?
Yeah, so I did law, criminology, and politics. And so I'm aware that maybe I can't give the most neutral advice. But at the firm, we always say you don't have to take law at all. Like I said, the first module you will do at university is English legal system. And that's the same across all law firms because there's only 2 uni providers. And so whether you've done law A level or not, you're going to cover it. So if you've done law at A level, you're just going to repeat parts of it again in your first module at uni. And so firms look for just your entry requirements. I'm yet to come across a firm that specifically states law as an entry requirement. And so whilst your teacher may be kind of saying that it's preferred, I definitely don't. If you don't want to do it at A level, don't do it. We always say do something you enjoy because you're more likely to get a better grade in something you enjoy than doing something for the sake of it.
Thank you. Harry, thank you. I think the question was something different. I think the careers person was advising not to take a law A level. Honestly, I think that's really bad advice from your teacher. My perception, which is based on experience and working with over 50 law firms, is they're fairly agnostic about what A levels you take. There are some that lend themselves more to legal work. So law would be one of them, history, politics, economics, anything that uses communication skills or problem analysis. Some firms quite like sciences, but honestly, I think that's a nonsense. I don't think he's coming from an informed position. And I know of a number of solicitor apprentices, including Harry, who have done law, and I know of a number who haven't. What I will say, I think is important, and I think Finn will back me up on this, is it's useful to take A-levels that you enjoy because you'll need to work hard in order to get the good grades, and ones where the structure of the the school teaching allows you to get a good grade. So when I was taking my A levels, I did French, and the French department was not very good, and that didn't help me because I didn't get the grade I should have wanted to do. But I would do something that you enjoy, that you're interested in, and where it's likely that the school is going to give you support on that. Vinny, I'll let you do yours in a second. But I think the other thing, there are some that where we might question where your heart is. So if you were, for example, to do, I don't know, dance, theatre, and drama, that I don't think would evidence that the law is what you want to do. So we'd want to think about that a little bit more. Finn, do you want to just talk about choosing the right A level, whereas a school is supporting you and what have you?
Yeah, I think all the points that you've made, Patrick, and Harry, you've made as well, are really important there. And I think, so for those of you who don't know, this year I've been working, before I start my apprenticeship with Stevens and Harwood in September, I've been working with a lot of Year 11 students who are going to be choosing their A-level subjects. And the biggest bit of advice I say is it has to be, yes, it has to be something that you enjoy. Yes, it has to be something that's going to be ideally linked to the career you're going into. But as Patrick said, we're kind of playing a bit of a game here with A-levels. You have to make sure that whichever you're choosing, you're going to come out with the outcomes that you have. For example, if you're at a sixth form or a college who, if you're looking at the previous grades, don't particularly have a track record of getting great results in a subject you want to take, but you know that you need an AAB requirement for a solicitor apprenticeship at a certain firm, we're probably not going to be opting for something where the average grade last year was a C or a D. So it is a bit of a game. I think the key takeaway for me is I took physics as one of my A levels. Absolutely hated it. I did really well in GCSE, and that's why I took it. I enjoyed it at GCSE. I thought this is where there's a topic I'm interested in. It's a little bit different to my other ones. Got to A level, really didn't enjoy it, and I felt really unmotivated to sit down when I got home from school and revise that topic for a long time. So I was always falling into, I love my politics, I love my economics, so I'm finding it easy to revise those topics because I'm really, really enjoying them. But then I'm really having to force myself to pick up that physics textbook when I've got home from college. So I think it encompasses all three. We're playing a bit of a game, but also making sure it's things that you enjoy. And I would completely echo what Patrick said as well, is that you're going to be doing an apprenticeship for 6 years of your life, then you're going to be doing a legal career for the rest of your career. So if we're not choosing subjects that directly sort of correlate with those, maybe there's a couple of questions to be asked of, is this going to be the career path for you? Because things like essay writing, things like an EPQ, I think the skills that I learned through doing my EPQ at A level have really sort of put me in a good position for the kind of work I'll be as a solicitor apprentice. So I think looking at those sorts of skills, essay writing, making information that maybe goes over 20 pages of a textbook, making that concise into maybe 2 or 3 pages, those sorts of skill sets really do lend themselves to the career. So that would be my side. Another question that we've got coming in for yourself, Harry. How did you go about finding the apprenticeships you applied for? How did you filter between different firms for you? And how out from applications did you look?
And so I found law quite late. I didn't know law until year 12. Until then, I wanted to be a history teacher, actually. So very late in the day, in all fairness. But so the best place is actually LinkedIn. I find a lot of firms now post lots of their applications on LinkedIn. Because I think some are maybe a bit wary around TikTok and Instagram. It's increasing, but I would focus your searches on LinkedIn in particular. Of course, you've got their websites. And I think they normally have their own separate page. So that's how I normally did it. I did a very accurate search of legal apprenticeships near me. And that kind of threw up quite a few pages. But you're all in the lucky position where you've got City Century, who I know have a whole page dedicated around application deadlines on their website as well. So I check things like that. Legal Cheek, I know, have a whole spreadsheet around application season that kind of list it all out as well when the deadlines are, when things open. Trying to think back to when I started the process. So I like to be organized. I had mine submitted about 10 days before the deadline was. So because I wanted that peace of mind. But I think as long as it's submitted before the deadline, I don't think it matters too much. As long as you give yourself enough time, I think it's really only you know how long it's going to take you to write an application. If you know you can sit there solidly for a whole day and kind of knock it out, that's fine. But if you know you need a bit more time to come back to it, like I did, give yourself that time. You don't want to be rushing it, and you don't want to be like sticking it into AI and just submitting something that churns out. And so really try and give yourself enough time. But personally, I gave myself about 10 days before the deadline, just for own peace of mind.
I think
Thanks.
to
And
something that you
then if I may just add, uh, as you get to know firms and as you interact with their early careers teams and the people that you see there, you'll get more of an idea of which are going to be your top firms. I think I'd add a couple of things to that. Is I think your main job is to get a solicitor apprenticeship with whatever firm. So I'd encourage you to not discount any firms too early. Once you've got a solicitor apprenticeship, you'll become a solicitor. Once you're a solicitor, you can move around a bit later. So don't close your mind too much. And then I think the other thing I would say is have a look at which firm is really into solicitor apprenticeships, and I would recommend that anybody that's on the City Century page, that anybody that's in that collaboration is properly paying attention to solicitor apprentices as a community. They really are investing in this. They would be a really good start for you. And if a firm is not doing that, especially one of the larger firms, I'd want to know a bit about that. And particularly one of the things that we try and do with City Century with our firms is reach out to the next generations. So that's your firm investing in. We properly believe in this pipeline, and also particularly in London, we try and create communities and run events, conferences, etc. Welcome teas, networking events for our solicitor apprentices so that they can stay really connected. So I would be looking for that level of support if I'm going into a job at the age of 18.
I'll echo what Patrick said. What I looked for in particular, I looked for a firm who I wanted a firm who had experience in solicitor apprenticeships. So there were firms who, when I was applying, it was their first year, I'd have been like the guinea pig cohort. I personally didn't want that. I wanted a firm who knew what they were doing. And so that's kind of what drew me to Burges Salmon amongst many other things. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, both. Next question from Charlotte. Charlotte says, is there any one thing you feel in particular which led you to know that the apprenticeship route was right for you over university?
Yes. So I did A-level politics, level 3 applied criminology and BTEC law. So BTEC law, it was 50-50 exams and coursework. So it was more of a practical way of learning. And so I knew instantly that that was a better way for me. I'm not somebody who can just sit in an exam hall and be spoken at and learn the information. I need to be doing it practically. And so when I instantly came across an apprenticeship, I knew that that was for me. And so I just know that I learn best when I'm actually doing something. So I did land law, for instance, with BPP, and then while I was in real estate, so I could learn about it and then come and practice it. And that's how I knew I learned best. So I think really look at your A levels, or whatever stage you're at for that instance, and learn, do you learn best by actually doing things, or do you learn best by kind of the traditional textbook way? And so that's what I personally did, which is how I knew an apprenticeship was for me over university. But both routes they both have their advantages. So don't purely discount uni. But yeah, just look at how you learn best, and that's what I did.
Thank you very much. That's exactly what I'd echo, Harry. Is I think I was just kind of looking at, I've been in education for this long. Is it something I see myself? Do I like the structure? And I think some people really lend themselves well to the university structure.
Yeah.
Some people, if, for example, certain law firms would mean that you'd have to relocate to London because they've only got one office in the UK. So that's another thing to factor in. Whereas obviously with universities, you've got a plethora around the country, and you can kind of be a bit more. You can stay locally. You've got a bit more control over that, which you don't potentially have over the route. So I think there's exactly those factors that you've just mentioned. We've got some students asking about Sienna in particular. Says, I was wondering where you can find some in-person work experience in year 10 or 11, because although there are lots of programs and events online, I'd like to get experience on what life is like within a law firm. And I can talk a bit about how I've had that from a criminal perspective, but have you found anything in terms of a commercial perspective with that, Harry?
Yeah, so I could talk about what Burges Salmon do. So we run our Bright Sparks program, which is 3 or 4 separate weeks throughout the year. So we normally have 2 weeks in the summer, 2 weeks in the winter, where you can actually come to the firm for a week. So we've got some coming up in July, and not next week or the week after. But you can actually come, you can shadow both our business services side and our legal side. So we run that in Edinburgh and in Bristol. But we pay for like relocation costs and stuff no matter where you are. So if you need a hotel paid for, that's fine. And so I know that's one place, Bright Sparks. We've got a whole page dedicated to it. So that's one in-person work experience you can look at. But then for me, I also affiliated myself with an organization called the Social Mobility Foundation. And so I got my internship with Freshfields through them. So you'll find that lots of social mobility charities will have partnerships with many law firms across the country who will offer things like internships or work placement days or work experience weeks. So have a Google around a kind of social mobility business partnership, social mobility foundation, and that's how I found most of my in-person work experience. But yeah, for Burgess Salmon specifically, we have our Bright Sparks program, which, like I said, we run nearly 4 times a year. We take about 25 students each time. So yeah, have a look at that as well, but also look at charities as well. They may also have some partnerships.
That's great advice. Thank you, Harry. I think what I did as well, which was a little bit different to some of the people I've spoken to, is I contacted my local magistrates court and I said, could I come and sort of experience the both sides? So they put me in touch with a local law firm, so I got to work with them for half a week, and then I would be with the district judge for the other half of the week. And yes, that was criminal focused, and that really sort of cemented for me. I love the idea of working within a law firm. I love the kind of the processes, the judicial process, what it looks like to work in a team on cases. And it also gave me some real insight into a different kind of law, being criminal, and cemented me onto the commercial side as well. So that might be something to consider if you're not just set on a commercial firm. You know, there are firms in our collaboration that do other kinds of law as well as the commercial side. So that might be something to consider as well. We've got another question from Ria, who has said, I saw somewhere that you get both a bachelor's and a master's degree at the end of a solicitor apprenticeship. Is that true?
Yes. So I don't know, Patrick, you wanted to come in.
No, you go, you go, you go.
I was going to say, so many solicitor apprenticeships are level 7 degree apprenticeships. So yeah, you come out of the same kind of law degree as what you would if you went to university in that respect. So you want to be applying to level 7 of solicitor ones, which are degree level.
Yeah, and it'll depend on which law school you go to and what the law firm who's instructing that law firm has asked the law school to do. So some of them, I think, when there's a dissertation element to the SQE-ish bit, you might get a master's. But I think the most important thing is that you get a law degree and you get the solicitor's qualifying exam. That's the thing that is the license to practice. So that's more important, I would say, than whether you do or don't get a master's. So anything that we do in City Century will get you that solicitor's qualifying exam, and that has a really quite a big market value. And then I think the other thing just to say is you're being offered a 6-year employment contract with every chance that that's going to be extended. That's really, really unusual in life. And the firms of our size and stature and reputation are not going to withdraw your apprenticeship at any stage. They are going to qualify you through. So the thing that we're offering you is the opportunity to become a solicitor, and I would grab that with both hands if I possibly could. And then, as I'm sure you're aware, you're paid a salary during all of that, and your educational fees are paid. So you come out of that not just loan free, but also, as Harry was saying, financially comfortable and paying into pensions. And we know that there are a number of fairly newly qualified solicitor apprentices, particularly in places like Bristol, who are buying their homes with their partners right at the age of like 24, 25. That's just unheard of.
Somebody in my year, Amelia, she has just bought her own house now in my year, and she is currently 21 with her partner.
Which is just incredible. So these are golden tickets. These really are. So go for them, is what I would say.
Just conscious of time, and as we've just reached 6 o'clock. So I've got one last question that's coming from Charlotte. Looking back at your internship at Freshfields, how does the general firm culture vary between different firms and where you are at Burges Salmon? So I guess rather than sort of talking specifically to one firm, potentially, how do you feel culture can differ depending on the scope of the firm is maybe a way to frame that one, Harry?
So, I mean, I'm not going to badmouth any firms. I think every firm is amazing in their own unique right. Of course, I will say Burgess Salmon is the best. But I think you need to really look at what you want out of it. So obviously Freshfields is a Magic Circle firm. And so I knew that there's that international aspect, but I wasn't too bothered about the international aspect. I wanted something where I had more kind of direct relationships with partners, with clients and stuff. So naturally, I felt that I maybe wouldn't get that at such a large firm, especially somebody so junior on. I didn't want to feel kind of lost, perhaps. And like I said, I've met the apprentices at Freshfields. I've met the head of recruitment. They're lovely people individually, and their culture is amazing. But I personally wanted something where it's a bit more personable, where you can still have that top level London quality work, but with a bigger apprentice cohort, more direct contact with seniors and stuff. So I think you really need to look at what you want from it. And if you want that international, that magic circle lifestyle, then you will probably find that the culture that those firms breed will align very closely with what you want. So you need to look at what firm kind of aligns to your moral values as well, and you will find that the culture follows quite closely. But I haven't been to a firm yet that isn't very nice to be at. So, and I've been to a fair few. So I think you're in pretty safe hands no matter where you apply. In all fairness, especially if you apply to any city century firms.
That's
And
excellent.
I was going to
We've
say,
managed.
I think that's probably all the questions, but I've just left my contact details and Jess's details on the screen there. If you wanted to connect with us on LinkedIn or give us an email, we'd be more than happy with that.
Perfect. That's really, really useful. Thank you,
much,
Harry.
Harry.
We've managed to get through all the questions, Patrick. So back over to you.
Great. So, thank you so much, everybody, for joining in, and well done, Harry, for managing that whole session by yourself. I don't think we've had anybody else that's managed to go solo for the full hour. So well done to you. Really, really impressive, super articulate, covered a lot of ground. And I think, it was all very, very practical. And look, you're getting some lovely reactions from if anybody does fancy reacting, that would be really lovely to see as well. Thank you to all of you who have been on today. Those of you who've already done your 8 sessions, you will get your certificate of attendance completion, but I would really encourage you to come back on Monday and Wednesday. Those will also be very practical. How do you get this job? And then how do you succeed in the job when you come through by 2 other great law firms? I am not sure what the score is, so I'm going to look up the score and pretend to be interested.
1-0 down, Patrick. 1-0 down.
1-0 down. That's not ideal to Congo. Right. Maybe we need to join and give some